Hi guys, my name is Robert Phillips, and thank you so much for coming to listen to my speech about renewable fuel resources. So to explain why we are having this conversation today, having this speech, is really we are going to run out of fuel as a planet by 2049. Fossil fuels, they're very limited supply, and there's no way to really manufacture any extra. So in doing that, there are a bunch of different types of fuel sources that are going to be available, such as propane, solar, but really the most important ones will be hydrogen, battery bioelectric power, and also ethanol. So the whole purpose of this speech is really to update you about the benefits and downfalls of all three of these different types of resources. So to discuss the first, ethanol. So if y'all want to pass this can of corn around, ethanol is all of a corn byproduct. It does have a very, very similar method of getting into cars compared to regular fuel. Ethanol will burn at 80% of what regular fuel will. And you may find it already in your cars. Most fuel already has about 15% ethanol, just as a filler, also to try to, decrease the impact on the environment. As far as the downsides is that if you took every single field on the surface of the earth and only made corn, we would still be short about 30% as far as what the world needs for power. You just can't manufacture enough. There's no way to make it inside of a lab, especially not cost effective. It's something like $10 a gallon. It's never going to happen. It is also really, really tough for it to stay in tanks for very, very long. You have to move it quickly. So this is a good product in places like Brazil where you have a lot of fields. You have a lot of fields of corn that can be moved quickly. For example, I think about 3/4 of the fuel stations of Rio are powered by corn alone. So that's really corn. Our next power we'll be talking about is battery power. I'm going to pass those batteries around. Battery power is the most looked at energy source as of now. Batteries are great because they are completely renewable. You just pull it off of the energy grid. However, they do need different things. You will find them in cars that are hybrids, but hybrids aren't really solving the problem. It's really going to be pure electrics, cars like Tesla and also Fisher that will only use battery power. Now, while it is renewable, it can be very bad for the environment. As far as your batteries are going to use sometimes 3 or 4 times as much like environmental harm to actually manufacture the batteries. So when you buy that Prius is actually hurting the environment more than if you bought a combustible engine. Also, as far as battery power, if you're using it constantly every single day as a daily driver, you will actually need to change out your batteries, and that is somewhere between 8 and 25 years, but in doing that, it's an extra $15,000 or $20,000 just to get the batteries along. As far as one last downside, the range is always really, really short. You only have anywhere from 100 to 250 miles. When you look at other regular combustible engine cars, you will see that your range will range anywhere from 300 to 800, depending on how much space you have. So if you're trying to drive cross country, it makes it really, really difficult to go farther. You're stuck. Also, you will have to get energy charging stations. The infrastructure as far as how we look at fuel and how we drive our cars will be different. It's going to take a long time. So really, it's a process that will take a long time to change. So the last thing we are going to be looking at is hydrogen. So you're looking at it now in H2O, water. But hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. You can never get an element that's going to be more readily available. So hydrogen hasn't really been looked at this side of the pond. They have been using it very, very often in Greenland and Iceland. They actually suck it out of the air and then use the thermo heat from volcanoes to actually power the manufacturing stations. So as of right now, if you try to manufacture hydrogen-based cars, the tanks will need to be a little bit more expensive. You're looking at about an extra $1,000 for the manufacturing of a car. But what you get is that once all of the once all of the fueling stations and all of the refineries are correctly tooled, you can actually get a gallon of, or the equivalent of a gallon of gas for $1. That's it, $1's worth. The combustion is about 90%, so your range is going to be very, very close. The only thing is that the tanks need to be pressurized, so it's going to be a little bit more dangerous to drive the car. They're needing to reposition the fuel tanks. But the plus side is that it's constantly renewable. You can never get enough. When it actually comes out the tailpipe, the only thing that comes out is water. So, completely renewable. But it will be really just a process as far as changing over refineries. So to recap as far as what we were talking about, we're talking about our three main sources of fuel that might be viable: hydrogen, ethanol, and battery power. So out of the three of those, you will have to look at the pros and cons of each, but at this point, electricity is really the forerunner. Hydrogen is the way of the future. So thank you all for listening. I really, really appreciate it, and y'all have a good day. Thanks.